Okay, all right, so let's get started. Good evening and welcome. The time is now 6:40. I would like to open the public portion of the July 16th, 2026 Richfield Park Board of Education Retreat Meeting. Let's begin with a salute to the flag. Dr. Sarlo, can you please read the Open Public Meetings Act?
Of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Richfield Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Bergen Record, Star Ledger, Municipal Building, Board of Education offices, and district website. For public participation will be conducted both in person and virtually through Zoom. All members of the public will be muted throughout the meeting. Public participation comments are limited to 5 minutes. The public will be able to both speak and be seen by the board when participating virtually, telephonically, via Zoom. Individuals participating virtually that wish to make comments during public participation will need to raise their hand by clicking the blue hand icon at the bottom of their Zoom window. Individuals participating by telephone who wish to make comments during public participation will need to hit *9 on their telephone to raise their hand. The Business Administrator Board Secretary will then unmute individuals one at a time to speak in the order in which their hand was raised.
Thank you, Dr. Sarlo. May I please have a roll call?
Mrs. Coloma,
Here.
Mrs. Kraft,
Here.
Mr. Feitros, Mrs. McNeil, Mr. Malul, Mrs. Rodriguez,
Here.
Mrs. Schmidt,
Here.
Mrs. Velez, Mrs. Orth,
Here.
President Martinez.
Here, we have a quorum. The board has received numerous correspondence, 8 to be exact, regarding the employment of a district employee. While we're not allowed to comment on the employment of any employee, we thank those individuals for taking the time to contact the board. We have no minutes to approve. We have a very light but consequential agenda for this evening. Tonight we'll have one public comment period, and then we'll begin the board retreat portion of the meeting, during which Dr. Vespignani will present the 26-27 district goals. These goals were based on board feedback as the voice of the community and his administration's assessment of our current state and needs. Then, with the assistance of Ms. Melissa Del Rosso from New Jersey School Boards, the board will formulate its own governance goals for the upcoming year. With that, we will now listen to citizens' comments off agenda. Do we have anyone to elevate? Okay, I will close citizens' comments off agenda and invite anyone to please contact the board directly or the superintendent directly through the website. I will then turn it over to Dr. Vespignani for a presentation of his proposed district goals for the 26-27 school year.
Thank you, President Martinez. Do we have the presentation available? Great, thank you. So I am pleased to share. Okay. See if it holds. Put the clicker down. Yep. All right, so I'm pleased to present my proposed district goals for the 26-27 school year. It's, I think, important to note that the first two, as President Martinez had alluded to, come directly through some evaluative feedback from the board directly to myself as superintendent in terms of continuing the growth of the district. Um, the board and community may not know that staff members are required through the NJDOE to connect one of their professional development goals to feedback in their evaluation. And although not necessarily a requirement for superintendents, in the spirit of reflection and leading by example, I felt it was prudent to build in some of that evaluative feedback into the district goals this year. So having said that, the first goal is to deepen two-way engagement with families, students, and the school community. And the idea here is to create various listening and learning sessions, both for families and students, creating a way to share how feedback has informed district decisions, increasing my presence at such events, and continuing advocacy on behalf of students and families. So as examples, and it's important to note that historically what we've done here is in September, I provide the board with a bit of an action plan with various major activities, completion dates, evidence that will be provided throughout my evaluation process in June. And I'll also be providing the board and community with updates on the progress with the district goals. Most likely that will come in November, January, and March. So as examples of what may be major activities in Goal 1, we are planning to create a series of monthly events for families and students to participate in. I will most likely do these just prior to board meetings, most likely around 5 or 5:30, depending on the actual event. So typically they would be an hour and a half. These will fall under the umbrella of the Parent Guardian Learning Academy that I've created here in my time. And the idea here is a little bit of a blend to provide families and students with learning sessions, but also to keep them informed of various instructional curricular programs, progress within the district. So it'll be a blend of actual presentations, and there will also be some sessions which are more informal, kind of open-ended, where we'll have a topic, but then also an opportunity for families to kind of share what's on their mind. And the idea is to do them in advance on the day of board meetings so that we can encourage families to then remain for the board meeting to stay, tuned into, what's on that monthly agenda. So I think it works pretty well there. I'm also looking to empower student voice. So I've already spoken with my principal team. We have some ideas. As examples, I'll be meeting monthly with our student government officials, which works pretty well as we have student reps at every board meeting to, again, keep my finger on the pulse of, how students are feeling and doing, to hear their perspective. Ms. Trigley and I are also working on a climate survey to be provided to our students so they can provide some feedback. And just to go back to the first parent guardian event, it's already planned for September 23rd, which is the September board meeting. 5 o'clock, very, very pleased to share that we have Mr. David Nash, who is an attorney with the New Jersey Principal and Supervisors Association, one of the experts in the fields of harassment, intimidation, bullying. We're actually having him come for 3 different events. The first to be provide a refresher training for our administrators and anti-bullying specialists. He'll also be attending our new staff orientation, do some training for new staff. We will then see him on September 23rd to present to parents and students in terms of all things related to HIB. And then we'll have him back on November 3rd to do a full staff training on one of our professional development days. So we're really excited to have David Nash join us, and we're excited to have him present to our families. I had met with a group of parents late in the school year last year, and we're going to be using that group to continue the trend of providing parents with educational opportunities. So I'm looking to be back in touch with that group that we met with, and also hear from the group in terms of what might be some topics that they're seeking, so that it's not top down and we're hearing from our families in terms of what they may be seeking in terms of continuing their own familiarity with the district. In terms of the second goal, it's to strengthen financial transparency and long-range facility planning. Again, this comes directly from some evaluative feedback. We had this somewhat built into a goal in the 25-26 school year, which was only partially met. So there's still some work to be done. We're very eager and very pleased to have Dr. Nick Sarlo join the team here. So he'll undoubtedly have a hand in this. But in terms of the long-range facility planning, as examples, the board and community should anticipate a facility assessment report. In fact, earlier today at 2 o'clock, Dr. Sarlo, Ms. Triglia, myself, and Mr. Igu met with our architect of record in terms of developing the 5-year long-range facility plan. But this facilities assessment report will provide us with some priorities, potential costs, so that we can appropriately map out our long-range facility planning in terms of how we're using our capital reserve, so that the board is fully aware in terms of each year where we've ended in recent surplus, how we are now earmarking that money for projects that are necessities. Naturally, this may also involve some items that lead into more wish list, but the idea here is to have a very clear perspective on what are our immediate needs in terms of our facilities. The board may be wondering, when was the last time we had a facility assessment? Our records indicate that it was done in 2018. The long-range facility plan is a 5-year plan. It expired in 2026. It was started in 2021. So I'm sharing that because these assessments and plans were done prior to my time as superintendent and prior to the time of our new architect of record. So it's certainly overdue, and I think it'll be a good roadmap for us in terms of being transparent and moving forward. Other examples within this goal will be to maintain an accurate and regularly reconciled position control roster, commonly referred to as a PCR, and some, establishing some consistent reporting protocols so that the board receives timely updates on business office financial matters. We've done some work in that space through our finance committee, but again, we're looking to kind of expand and make sure that that goal is fully met. And then lastly, in terms of District Goal 3, as the board and community know, we recently adopted, the board adopted a new AI policy and plan. So now the rollout of that plan is really critical to be successful. So Goal 3 is to implement the district's AI policy and plan with fidelity. So the goal is to support a thoughtful and well-communicated rollout of the district's newly adopted AI policy and plan, ensuring that staff, students, and families understand expectations and have the training and resources that they need for responsible use. This may also include developing implementation guidance and procedures aligned to the policy, providing staff with professional development, which I can tell you we are just light years ahead to when I arrived here in my first year in 2023 in terms of the PD plan. Ms. Triglia and the supervisory team have done a really excellent job in terms of laying that out. So we're pretty much all set for our professional development slate for the year, but notably in the beginning of the year, we'll be sure to push out some AI professional development in our opening days with staff so that we're clearly communicating what the policies are, kind of the do's and don'ts and expectations. So we're really excited about this, and the 3 goals as a plan, as a whole, I think, are really important to continue, the growth of our students, both from a student achievement perspective, but also with their experience. And of course, we want to hear from students and families along the way, and making sure that, the board is fully informed in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with these goals. So, having said that, happy to take any comments or questions or concerns.
I have a couple of questions. I guess starting backwards. So I know that our policy and stress estimate has given us kind of a guardrail framework, guardrail policy, which I think is, important first step. But I'm also wondering, like, are we also beginning to talk about, or what we do here, I think, in terms of talking about integrating it into programming? What's our policy, but what's our vision for how we're going to integrate AI use into the tech spaces, into all of our other kind of vocational programs, and that policy is not going to show up on stress estimate. It's going to be at the intern.
Yeah, the policy, you may recall, is a bit broad. It's really the plan, and then in addition to that, the rollout plan. So the rollout plan has already been developed. You may recall that we had a AI integration committee existing from last year where we had students, staff, families join. We're looking to tap back into that committee to assist a little bit with the rollout. But the rollout plan has already been developed. Ms. Trigley, again, has worked diligently in that space, along with our administrative team. And the idea here, in terms of attainment of the district goal, is to build in some of those major activities from the rollout plan into the action plan. But the rollout plan will be released in September, and it's going to help kind of guide the rollout in terms of, again, what the expectations are, kind of the do's and don'ts. But it's really the plan and the rollout plan that are going to guide these conversations. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess closer to English stuff. Like, are we going to be, is this plan going to result in encouraging teachers to actively integrate AI into the classroom? Will it at some point be evaluative, where how much have you integrated AI into your classroom? Like, looking down the road that far.
Yeah, no, I don't believe it'll be evaluative, but the idea here is to expose staff in terms of what the expectations are for appropriate use, because it does require them to set expectations within their own classroom. So naturally, we want some consistency on that. But the idea here is to expose them, and we've already been doing some of this work in our previous professional development, just exposing them to some of the great things that can be accomplished with artificial intelligence in the classroom. I think I answered your questions.
Yeah, and I guess yes, you did, but I'll just close it with, like, the way I view AI, and I think many people are beginning to view AI, is like it's like the computer. So if you had a teacher who refuses to use a computer, it would be evaluative at some point. Like, you got to work computers into your program.
Yeah.
So just for this school year, because we are rolling out our policy and, a vision for what we hope, we recognize that there's staff who are still kind of sitting all over the map with their feelings towards AI and the use of, right? And so our job first is in September, we're going to just introduce our vision, what our thought process is, what our expectations are. Like for the K2 World example, there is no student use of artificial intelligence as far as we know, like ChatGPT, right? Kids are exposed to Google, which is AI, right? So, but it's just understanding, like, if you're using something like a ChatGPT, these are the parameters that we kind of expect. But in that process, we also want to survey the staff in their comfort level and kind of understand where certain staff members land. And we're trying to create buckets that would give us like buckets of, I don't use AI at all. I think I'm an expert, but this is what I think this means, right? So just trying to gauge that. And then October and November PD days will be differentiated, meaning like, I hate it, I don't want to use it ever. So then let's put you in a session that kind of shows you the benefits of and ways that you can use it, just to kind of get your feet wet. So this year is really trying to understand, engage where we are. And then moving forward, we have to constantly revisit. Our expectations can change, but we aren't forcing anyone to use it just yet. But we are expecting that grade levels communicate with each other. So, for example, 6th grade ELA teachers across the board, if they're going to do a project that is inclusive of AI, that they talk to each other, and the expectations and the criteria are clear, so that's not one person doing one thing and another person doing another. And I think because there's this whole thing of students use it in an appropriate way, it's really understanding what's appropriate and what's not, and how to communicate that to the students. So that really is our focus this year.
Can I ask a follow-up question with regards to student use? Is there a vision for like how we're going to teach kids how to responsibly use AI? And if so, what is that going to look like?
I think that's part of what we're working toward. I think until we have a really good understanding of where our staff sits with it, it'll help us determine where we want teachers and students to go with it. So for example, like we're thinking about streamlining programs that we use, right? Programs that, for example, we have Google Suite for everything. So really trying to get teachers to be experts in using Gemini rather than a ChatGPT, right? Here's Gemini, here's what it offers. So I think understanding where we are as a district and not trying to bring too much all at once, because everybody has an AI that they love, but I think those are the things, right? We have to go back to the code of conduct and what that looks like. And when we talk about the students cheating versus not cheating, giving the teachers the understanding of what's appropriate, what's not, what's the outcome, right? Just like everything else, when we talk about student objectives and student outcomes, it's really asking teachers to think about the purpose of what they're setting for any assignment, what their outcome is, and how it all connects. So I think that's why like the PD is really important, because there's prompting, there's the teacher themselves, how they're using it versus how they're expecting students to use it. Are they teaching it? How much of it is taking away from our core instruction, right? Like those are the things that we have to kind of work through. And I think we're working on a survey for September to help us gauge where teachers will land in October and November.
Thank you, Ms. Trigler.
Can I ask just a, we're one-to-one with Chromebooks down to the first grade. At what level?
Sorry, one of the things that we did a couple years ago is we took Chromebooks away from kindergarten and first grade and gave them iPads
Okay.
to kind of make it a little bit easier, but we do not, we try to limit the use
usage
of
of
it because it really came down to the diagnostic assessments that were technology-based, but our goal is to have books and writing and things like that in our elementary world. That's why we decided K2, just not.
I guess my question is coming from, I think that this policy is similar to the one that we did in our district, and it really wasn't contemplated that the lower grades would be exposed to AI, or would only be exposed if a teacher did something using AI and then presented it to the students, that they wouldn't have direct access to it. But Chromebooks all run Chrome, and Chrome all has Gemini. You can't do a Google search and not be exposed to AI. And certainly, if we're it's almost like contradicting each other. So what's our plan for that?
So I don't want to digress too much, but we are purchasing a new ELA program for K5, and that program is not relied upon technology, meaning like that is not something that they need to be using on a consistent basis. They should be using the consumables where kids are writing their responses and things like that. So, and they really don't have time for much of anything else. So we're hoping that because our core program, which social studies is kind of embedded in that, lends itself away from the technology use, we won't really have that issue. Yeah, definitely things to think about.
This might be digressing a little too much into this AI conversation, and I'm illiterate about all this stuff, but I found out from like a college student that, because I was like, how does the school know if you're cheating, if you're using AI? And she said that they have a scanner or some kind of scanning system. Is that something that we're going to like need to implement possibly, or like a cost associated with having to now watch out for AI? Or
I'm not sure if there's any free programs that teachers use currently. We haven't purchased anything for that just yet.
There is no real reliable scanner. There's
Okay.
plagiarism detectors, right? And the
Okay.
plagiarism detectors have all kind of merged towards detecting AI.
gotcha.
There's no way to prove that. Yeah.
Okay.
I did want to say something, sorry. Sorry. Off of the AI, but back into the number one goal over here about deepening the two-way engagement. I did want to comment, I think it's a great idea, Dr. V, that you decided to do these events on the same night as the Board of Ed meeting so that people can show up. I think that's a great idea. So, kudos.
Thank you. And it's also
We can
important,
show up to the
Yeah.
events.
it's also important to note
I,
that
I'm
in
sorry.
terms of supporting our multilingual families, we're also engaging in conversations with our supervisor of ML and world language in terms of canvassing or surveying, our families in terms of what they need. And we're also looking into the purchase of, how would you describe that, Ms. Triglia? The purchase of translation devices at these events?
And also for our board meetings. So our ESL supervisor, world language supervisor, talked at length with, I forget the name of the company, but they offer services where in real time it could translate our Board of Ed meetings in Spanish. So anyone can join. There might be other languages in addition to Spanish. I don't remember which one it was, but we do have a quote and we could use title fundings for that, Title III funding, which would be, tremendous. And so these are some of the things that we're looking to do. And also devices for real-time conferences and things like that, CST meetings, central office registration and things of that sort, so that, if there is another language that's spoken that we don't have a translator for, we can use this in real time, and it'll assist with communication.
Thank you.
You beat me to it, Coloma. But no, like it's obvious that you took time and there's like a logic behind every single goal. And the fact that you're connecting the first goal, like the family engagement and community night before the board meeting, to me, I was like, whoa, I was super impressed. It's like you're working with us. We're working together to move this district forward even more. Thank you. You're not just giving us goals to give us goals.
Scott, I guess, how will you bring the community in on our long-range facilities planning or on increasing, we had some parents who came out and said, where are my tax dollars, and made comments like that. I know we've raised taxes already twice in the past 2 years. How will we bring the public into our plan?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think a few things come to mind. One, with a platform such as the events prior to the board meetings, that we can certainly build in some, facility updates into that as a talking point. But also, I do the State of the District presentation in September, so hopefully folks remain after the HIB event with David Nash. And when I do my State of the District presentation, I always provide an update on all things related to facilities and the progress that we've made with pictures. And also just in terms of any updates of my goals, again, being in November, January, and March, I can speak to, the development of any of those related items. So I think there's a few platforms that may lend itself to that.
We can include these things also on our social media. The parking lot full of all the roofing material and things like that, so that people know where their tax dollars are going. We're going to begin our board retreat now, very late, and thank you so much for your patience. And we are going to excuse the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and the BA, and we promise to take time for the BA notes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good retreat.
Really
Thank
good.
Yeah, thank you. Not anticipated. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I will email you. Please, I want
Are-
to preface it with, I'm sending it to give you a place to start. Don't feel like you have to use it.
we're running 2 hours, an hour and a half behind, so let's get started. Thank you.
Okay, hi, everybody.
Hi.
This is on. Hi, everybody. I'm
All right.
Melissa with New Jersey School Board Association. I am your field service representative. It's my second time here. Tonight, what we're going to be doing, everybody has a packet, all right? We're going to go through a presentation about the 8 characteristics of effective school boards. This is a presentation I've given probably like 7 or 8 times so in like the last couple of months. Every time I do it with a board, it comes out differently. And the reason for that is you're going to connect with things within this that other boards may not. And that's the goal here. I'm also going to encourage you to ask questions during it. If we're going to have conversation, let's have conversation during it. Don't hold your questions. Don't save them. It's part of the point of this is to have those conversations and understand where you are and that kind of stuff. Okay, in your packet, you have a copy of the presentation. You have this form here, getting to know you. This is an icebreaker. I'm going to skip this evening with your permission due to the timing. However, I want to tell you, hold on to it. And if you have the opportunity at one of your board meetings to take the 15 minutes, 20 minutes to do this, the purpose behind this is that you would break up into groups of 2 with a board member that you don't normally work with or sit next to. And you go through this and it's like a little interview. And I promise you, it is a really great opportunity to get to know other board members. And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is, in order to work well together and be more cohesive, you really need to understand where your fellow board members are coming from. Everybody has different ways of looking at things and different whys and different perceptions and things like that. This is always pretty impressive when I do this with the boards at the time, because the individual who does the interview, right, you're interviewing each other back and forth, then gives basically gives sorry, I'm losing the plate, gives a feedback to the board to introduce the board member that they interviewed. It is really good because you connect in a way, and 9 times out of 10, I hear, I had no idea about this. I had no idea about that. And it also asks for your why. So I'm going to encourage you to hold on to it, and that hopefully you get an opportunity to do it, because it really is a great exercise. There's a few other things in there. Anything on the left side, if you're facing open your thing, these are just supportive documents. So you can look at them at your leisure. And then on the stuff on the right, we're going to go through. One is the presentation, and the other thing comes down to, at the end, we'll go through your district goals and board goals, from mostly your board goals, what we're focusing on from last year, and we'll talk about going forward. The presentation this evening is based on a study done by the Center for Public Education through National School Board Association. It's the 8 characteristics of effective school boards. So if you want to go onto that site, you can always pull that up and read the whole thing. But that's what this is based on tonight, this presentation. So I want you to know that. All right. So here we go. First, we're going to make this go. It's on. Right there. There we go. Okay. So we're skipping through the icebreaker and we're getting to know you. Okay. So we're going to start off with talking about board members as individuals before we get into working as a team. Okay. And what we're looking for. The price of greatness is responsibility, and responsibility starts with you. So you as yourself have to be a good board member in order to then work well together. So effective board members make effective boards as individual board members. You put your students' needs first. You focus on student achievement and continuing growth. Ensure your decisions are based on the needs of your students, not party affiliation or political ideology. Remember, you represent all of the students in your district, and be a great role model for your students, staff, parents, and community. So obviously, you're always being watched when you're working as a board member, but you're also being watched when you're not sitting here at this table. So that's just something to remember. You're always being considered to be a board member. Okay, as individual board members, be aware of your body language. So when you're sitting here, how many people here watch your recordings? Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to recommend that you do, if you have one where you have a lot of people come in and nobody wants to do this, I don't watch myself either. I fully get it. Nobody wants to do it. But just something to think of. Your body language, especially when it's a 3-hour meeting and you have comment after comment after comment, you can't respond, and you're kind of getting pummeled. That's what happens. Most times the public shows up when they're not happy. It's rare that you have a full room just to say what a great job you're doing, right? That's the nature of being a board member. So, and again, I said it last time, but just I should remind you, I sat in your seat. I was a board member for 9 years. I completely understand what you go through. It's a tough job. It could be a thankless job, but obviously it's rewarding when you see the effect that you have. And you do have a major effect on the district. Just a lot of times people don't realize it. Again, they only come usually when there's something wrong. So on nights like this, when you have nobody here, you're obviously doing something right. Okay. But being aware of your body language, it's hard. It's hard to sit for 3 hours of public comment. And no matter what you do, if you smile, somebody's going to read into that. If you don't smile, if you sit there with a straight face, all of these things have impacts. But just do yourself a favor, if you have the opportunity, just check it out or be aware of yourself every once in a while. Put a little note on your computer that reminds you to take a look at yourself and check yourself. And I know it's difficult, just something to think about. Be attentive to the motions and discussion. Rephrase what the person has stated if you do not understand. When you do that, be careful how you rephrase it. Do not rephrase it with judgment, right? Rephrase, because sometimes you may not be understanding what you're hearing and you don't want it to come off as an attack, but you do need to understand it. When you're listening to somebody, if somebody's during commentary or during, when somebody's doing a motion, whatever the case may be aware to listen, not to respond, which is what we usually do. We're preparing. What is our response going to be? Just listen. Take your time. Don't rush. Prepare your comment after. And that's because a lot of times we're so busy, we heard something and we're so busy getting ready, we don't hear the rest of the comment, or we don't understand where they're coming from. Just something to think about. Avoid cell phone or electronic devices during the meeting. I might have said this last time I was here because I feel like I say it all the time. Okay, let me just start by saying we all know that you get a giant check at the end of the week for this job you do, right? So before you go cash that zero check, I just want you to be aware, everybody has jobs. Some of us have children and all that kind of stuff. So when I sat on my board, I always had my phone with me because my children were with babysitters at that point in time. But if I were sitting on a board today, my daughter's in college. Either way, doesn't matter where they are on the spectrum of time, it's important to you, and that's fine. But if your phone rings or you get a text that you must take care of, excuse yourself and take it and leave the room. It's really important. The other thing is don't scroll on your phone. Don't reply to a text at the table. Don't look through your computer. I have watched it happen where somebody over there is texting or doing something and somebody over here is looking at designs for their house because they're not engaged in the meeting. Again, I'm not saying it's you guys because it's not you. I'm just saying two separate sides of the room. And if you're redesigning your house, I apologize. But my point is, to the public, it appears that you're having a side conversation. And then that opens up another problem. Okay. So yes, you have a life and you have responsibilities. And if you need to deal with them, you should, but you need to take them away from the table if that happens. It's the perception of what the public sees, and you don't want any issues there. Okay. Look, act, and be interested. Even after 3 hours, apologize when appropriate. If you misheard something or you are quick, sometimes we get very passionate about what we're doing, and you should, because that's why you're here, right? Because you're passionate about student achievement and the students and everything else, and that's a good thing. But if you feel like, you need to pull it back, it's okay to say, I'm sorry. It's okay to say, oh, wait a minute, let me check myself. Be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is not a bad thing. Okay. And what happens in executive session stays in executive session. Understand your roles and responsibility. Conduct yourself with respect and civility. Actively listen to others with an open mind. We've just talked about that. Imagine the other person's point of view. It's also why that is such a great opportunity before we go into this, because when we do the icebreaker, you really get an idea. Wait, I didn't realize that. I didn't know they had that in their background. Now I better understand why they're so worried about this when we talk about it. So that's kind of important. Be inclusive rather than exclusive. Be aware of your own implicit biases. We all have them. Take advantage of professional development as an individual. And that's offered by school boards, but any other way that you have, any other professional development. If someone comes to you with an issue, use the chain of command, right? Everybody knows that. Do you have that on your website? A lot of districts do have the chain of command on their website. And basically it's just telling the public, and you would follow the same, if somebody comes to you with an issue about a teacher, refer them back to the principal. First, they should go to the teacher or the individual and then to to the principal and work their way up. You obviously should not get involved in that. The reason for that is as soon as you get involved, you don't even want to know the facts. Because once you do, if it was to elevate to the board level, you now need to recuse yourself because you've gotten involved in the situation. The other thing is it undermines the authority of your administration and your teachers. People will feel the need to go right to the top. And you want to discourage that. You want them to go through the chain of command. Listen, acknowledge the best way to assist them is to refer them back, refer them to the lowest level in the chain of command, all that stuff we talked about. Also, if that were to happen, let your superintendent know. The reason for that is so that they're always prepared. And the biggest thing you'll hear me say tonight, and I say through every presentation I do, no surprises at the table, no surprises to the board from the superintendent or administration, and no surprises from the board to the superintendent. You can let them both know, but the reason I say the superintendent, because that's where it's going to end up, right? If they need to know if there's something brewing in the school. It may never get to their desk, but it could. And that way they're not surprised. Does that make sense? Mhm.
I guess an example would be when something jumps off on Facebook or, people are gathering the pitchforks.
Yeah, well, anything like that, anything, because that's not something you're going to get, nobody came to you on that, right? That's something that you're seeing happen usually. So, okay, so if it's social media, I'm going to go through both. If somebody personally came up to you, you can make the call if whatever your board norms are, and all boards handle things differently. I'm assuming it's not happening every day. I'm assuming it's going to happen a handful of times at your time on the board. And that's why I say, let the superintendent know directly. The point is not to involve everybody on the board, but just making the superintendent aware that this is brewing, or that there was an issue and you referred them back. The reason for that is, should that person go to the principal, the teacher, whatever, and now say, well, I spoke to Mary and she's on the board and she told me you shouldn't have done that. That protects you because you've gone to the superintendent to say, hey, I had this conversation. This is what I recommended. It's kind of being ahead of it because sometimes people will read into, well, I think she really agreed with me because I could just tell the look in her eye. And then it turns into something else, I mean, there's only so much that you can do from that perspective. And they want the support. And then also, maybe 8 times out of 10, it's going to turn into nothing. It's just making sure that your superintendent's not surprised. Because if your superintendent then hears it from the teacher and the teacher works their way up to the superintendent and says, well, apparently there was a board member involved and they were like completely behind this and told this person I was wrong. That's what you're trying to get ahead of. When it comes to social media, stay off it, right? Stay off it you can review it all you want. And I do think that's a good idea because you kind of get an idea of what's brewing. Again, if there's an issue, that's usually where you're going to see it first. Something to keep in mind, just because it's blowing up on social media doesn't mean it's a major problem. You get a lot of the same people in there, and then it turns into like a telephone game where everything changes. So take it with a grain of salt. But also be aware of it. Make sure your superintendent's aware of it because chances are they're not looking at that and they're not in that group. Most importantly, do not comment. Don't comment. You will never win because you'll be dealing with facts and they deal with non-facts, right? The people that are looking to make a problem. You just want your superintendent to be aware because if it is a bigger problem and they need to address it, they can address it in the proper way as opposed to social media. Again, you will never win on social media. One thing I say especially with the elementary, you'll see are we going to get a snow day? Think we're going to have a snow day? I heard we're going to have a snow day, but we didn't get a call. Why didn't we get a call? I heard that district got a call. What's happening? And there's not going to be a snow day tomorrow, or maybe you don't, whatever, right? Stay out of it. Don't respond. Everybody knows if you want the details, go to the website, but this is how it plays out. Don't take the bait because that's what's going to happen. And at the end, somebody will, I promise you, somebody's going to go out there and give the right information and somebody's going to give the wrong information. So it's all going to be out there. It's what people choose to follow and believe. Of course, the school social media, that's fine. Let that run. You know, sometimes people will do that. It's been put on school social media and then copy it over to, you know, the mom's group in Facebook. But in all honesty, I highly recommend you just stay out of it. Okay. Okay. Realize that none of us know everything, even though the public thinks you know everything. They think you know every single thing about every student in this school. Just remember that. Okay. Ask questions when appropriate. You can disagree without attacking the individual, and avoid criticizing or embarrassing someone in public. And that goes to obviously here at the table that we're referring to. I'm going to throw something in here that I just picked up in a training session in Idaho a couple weeks ago. And there's a lot of information coming out down the pike about conflict with boards, because there's a lot of that happening. There's a lot of dysfunctional boards. There's a lot of political stuff coming into the school boards, and it's getting more and more difficult, ugly, and things like that. So when it comes to the board voting and making decisions, and you have discussion on a topic, okay, a couple of things. One thing to mention is you operate with committees, right? So it's good, and the public often doesn't know that before something even gets on the agenda, it's been vetted through a committee. The board has reviewed the notes. Everything's kind of played out. So sometimes it appears to the public that you're just yesing everything, right? It is okay that if you, for you, and this is maybe theater, as some people would say, but it's okay for you to ask a relevant question, even though you all know it, for the sake of the public, right? You're not going to be surprising your superintendent or your administration. They're going to be able to answer it. But if you think there's something in there that is going over the public's head because you've already been privy to all this information, don't hesitate to do that. I mean, don't do it all the time. That's not the point. The point is, if you know it's something that's controversial, people are going to have questions about something that you would think was an issue. If you were, you know what I mean? Don't be afraid to do that. That's fine. The other thing I would recommend is when you go around for discussion, when you're voting on something, if this is an issue that you know the board is going to have some disagreements on, and obviously the board functions as a group of one, right? You're one body when you're all together, and you go with the majority opinion. I recommend that you don't just go with the majority opinion. Consider consensus. So if you have a minority group that is completely against something, and then you have a majority group that is for it, it's okay after you go around and understands everybody's position before you finalize your vote to try to understand what is the major issue for the people that are in the minority. Because there could be just a piece in there that incorporated into what you're deciding or how you're moving forward will make everybody comfortable. So it's just something, it's consensus building. And again, consensus building is going to go down to understanding each other and where you all come from and understanding why. And sometimes it's not going to happen. Sometimes you're just going to completely be on opposite sides of an issue, and that's okay too. Respect it. It's part of the job of being on the board, and whatever the majority of the board decides on, that is the decision that the board has to back. Okay? There'll be more coming down the road. I have a lot of information coming out in creating some presentations on consensus building and that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for that. It's one of my goals for this year. Okay. Communicate with the committee chair and or that administrative liaison if unable to attend a committee meeting. Come prepared for committee meetings, having reviewed the agenda and attachments beforehand. Communicate with the board president and or BA if you will be late or unable to attend a board meeting. And come prepared to the board meetings, having asked questions beforehand. Being prepared makes everyone look good. So if you have meetings where we go through roll call and you call out a name and there's no response, right? It's okay. And then we move on to the next. It's a good thing for the board president or an individual to say, oh, they can't make it this evening. You don't have to give a reason why, you can if they want. But the reason for that is otherwise it kind of appears like, oh, they just didn't show up. They're just not here. Don't let the public feel that. Make sure, that it's, it appears that you are all functioning as a team, right? And the same thing goes if you know somebody's going to be running late and you do the roll call. They're running a little behind, they'll be here in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Just so the public knows, if they walk in late, it's not like, oh, that one didn't show up on time. There's another one, right? You kind of want to help everybody look good. That being said, if you're not going to be here or you're going to be late, make sure somebody knows, because otherwise you're going to be out there because nobody's going to speak up for you, right? And that does happen on boards. I know a few that they just don't know if they're going to have a quorum. So, and again, that's a respect. It's a respect for each other. Even if you don't agree with another board member's perspective or where they're coming from, you have to agree that you're all here putting in the time without the benefits and pay that everybody thinks that you're getting. So you're here for a reason, and everybody is here for the students. Again, you might be coming at it from different angles, but everybody's here for the students. So work to build a consensus, which we just talked about, some ideas on how to do that. Realize the importance of a board decision-making process, I assume that is. Realize that you may be in the minority opinion from time to time. And when a majority of the board votes to support A, it's time to stop lobbying for B. Example, don't bring up at the next meeting because you think that the rest of the group didn't understand what you're trying to say. Even within the same meeting, don't keep going over the topic again and again and again. When you're preparing for the meeting, if you think you're going to get resistance and you think you're going to be in the minority, prepare your argument, be concise, be clear, be specific, because you have a few minutes to make that point. If you don't make that point, and you may make it, they may get it, but you have to accept the fact that that opportunity was your opportunity, and don't keep bringing it up. Unless a couple of months down the road, things have changed drastically and you need to revisit something, that's a different story, but don't assume one little thing changes that. When a decision has been made, respect the board's decision and support it. That's really important. There you go. No surprises. We talked about this. From the board to the superintendent or the superintendent to the board. When you have questions on an agenda, how do you handle that? If you get the agenda packet and you have a question, what do you do? Board president. And then, okay, so you have a timeline to cut that off, right? What happens after that timeline?
After that time, it's not a hard cutoff. If a board member has a specific question or an important question, they're still given time
Okay.
to reach out to the
Do
superintendent.
you respond with answers, or does the superintendent respond with answers prior to the meeting, or are they answered at the meeting?
Prior to the meeting as much as possible.
Okay, so something to think of. I would do a hard cutoff. What's today? Thursday? Do you meeting on Thursday night?
We usually get the agenda, the board gets the agenda on a Friday.
Okay.
And a Friday before the meeting, which is on a Wednesday.
Okay,
So usually by
Sunday or Monday.
Sunday
Okay.
night or
So-
Monday midday.
so whatever your cutoff date is, it should be respectful of the administration to be able to pull together those answers if they're responding, right? And this is a good example, right? If you have multiple board members asking the same question, that's a great opportunity for one of those conversations when the board is discussing it. If a couple of you all had the same question and you got your answer, public might have the same question too. So it might be still one that you want to bring up, even though you're aware of what the outcome's going to be, right? Just for the public to know that you all had the same concerns. But that being said, you should have a deadline, whether it's Tuesday night, 5 o'clock, whatever. And then anything after that, still take the questions right up to the last minute. If you have questions, and don't be afraid that you're reading that packet the morning of the meeting. It happens. We all have a life and everything else. Don't be embarrassed by that. Get that question to your administration or through your president, whatever your board norms is, whatever your process is, so that at least when you ask the question that evening, your administration is ready to answer it. Otherwise, you lose that opportunity because you might not get that answer till the next meeting, or it might disrupt the ability to vote on. So my point is, have a deadline where you're going to get your responses, but then the questions can still come, but just understand you're going to be more likely to get that answer at the meeting. Okay, it's just respect each other. Okay, so now we're going to go into how that was talking about how you behave individually as board members. Now we're going to talk about how you're working together School boards in high achieving districts exhibit approaches and characteristics that are markedly different from boards in low achieving districts. This is just something to contemplate as we go through this. What kinds of things do you think school boards do to influence student achievement? That is your main role as a board member. And if you always go back to the question of whatever's on the table that you're trying to decide, what's the best thing for the students, you'd be surprised how easily you can come together on a consensus, right? Remember, when you're doing that, you're thinking of what's best for the students, not what's best for what the parents think best for the students, right? That's why you're here. You're a diverse group with that decision-making power. Not saying don't take their thoughts into consideration, because that's why we have public comment, and that's very important. And obviously, they're children. But all those things considered, the school and the board has to look at everybody. And if you're getting a loud group of parents to a specific group, that might not be the best thing for all the students in the district. So just some things to think of. And sometimes it's hard because you want to hear, the squeaky wheel, right? And then you're worried, they're all saying this, maybe I should rethink and you should always reconsider what you're thinking. But at the end of the day, your answer has to be what's best for the student body overall. Okay? And if you do that, it'll be a lot easier to come to a consensus. All right, we're going to go through these. There's 8 characteristics. The numbers you're going to see within your thing are not in numerical order because we kind of group them by category. So this is vision and belief. Effective, I'm going to have my thing here. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Okay, effective school boards commit to a vision of high expectations for student achievement and quality instruction, and define clear goals towards that vision. Effective boards have strong shared beliefs and values about what's possible for students and their ability to learn, and the system and its ability to teach all children at high levels. Okay. Boards in the studies feel internal urgent desire to improve adopted vision statements, committed to success for all students, use statements frequently in public and staff presentations. So you should be making sure everybody knows what your vision is. First of all, you should know what your vision is. They refuse to make excuses for poor performance or blame external factors, and believe that staff was capable of improving results and would need to change instructional classroom practices to make that happen. Okay, before we go on to goals, is everybody familiar with your mission? And do you have a vision statement?
We have a mission and a vision statement, but I'm thinking out loud that I don't have it committed to memory.
Okay.
And I probably want to add it to the tagline of my email so that I see it every time I send it.
Exactly, right? So the blue paper in your packet gives your district mission. It's long, so I don't expect you to be able to remember it or recite it. But what you do want to do is make sure that you're aware of it and that it's tied to the decisions that you're making and that the board supports it. Vision statements tend to be very short, and they should be based on what a kindergartner could recite, to be perfectly honest with you. It's what drives you and it's where you want to be. The vision is where you're going, okay? And that's your direction. And that could help you make your decisions, right? But most importantly, every single one of you should be able to have an elevator speech, right? That 2-minute heads up is what makes this district so great. As board members, you should know what makes your district great. So it's just something to bounce around, to think about. But if you were put on the spot, somebody comes up to you in the public and says, hey, why is this, what do you think that this school does so well? You should have that answer. You should believe in that as you sit on this board. It's very important. Usually it's a vision statement, and that's what you would start with. Where we're moving after this budget cycle, you're probably well aware. The public's going to want to know more and more about what's happening in the district, right? So if you go back several years ago when we used to have every budget voted on, is there anybody here that's been through that?
Where the town votes for the budget?
Right, where it wasn't a 2% cap that goes through.
Yeah.
Richfield Park opted to take that away from the citizens by moving the election from April to November. Those boards of education that continue to vote for their board members in April have the right to vote on the budget. When I was president, the community knocked the budget down. We had to have joint meetings between the school board and the board of commissioners, which is part of the process, to get a budget passed so that the school district could function. Personally, I think it was a great miscarriage of justice to take the voting away from the citizen.
Okay, so what happens is if your budget is voted down, right, by the public back then, it actually went to the town. Okay, right. So, okay, so mayor and council then makes a decision on what your budget's going to be. The reason a lot of districts went away and were happy with a 2% cap and plus your waivers, et cetera, is because if it's voted down, it is now it's out of your hands, and you lose control of it. So there's pros and cons to both sides, but the 2% cap is not going to sustain the districts going forward if healthcare costs keep going and the costs keep being driven in the manner that they're driven, right? The other problem districts have is if you're not raising your taxes by your maximum, which would be the 2% plus your waivers, right? Because we know it's not 2%. It's a lot more than that when you take in the waivers you get for additional student enrollment or healthcare waivers, et cetera. There are school boards that want to keep the public happy and not raise it. You just need to be careful when you do that because you don't have a savings account as a district, right? So when you do that and you keep cutting yourself short, eventually you're using, you're running out. You just can't sustain it, right? Most negotiations go higher than 2% for your staff increases. So when you think about that being one of your largest costs, then add in healthcare benefits for your staff. At some point, you're continuing to pull, right, from your ability to purchase curriculum and things like that. Never mind, building repairs and improvements. So just something to consider when you're making those decisions when it comes to budgets, and we can talk about that in much more detail at another time. But look at your history. Make your decision based on not just what's happening today, but on what's going forward. And my purpose of this conversation was about you will soon need to be able to answer questions to the public on the finance side, okay? And you're going to need to know why you're so good as a district and why you deserve all that taxpayer money. When it comes to the town and council making the decision for you on your budget, my experience has been, and I'm not saying this is your district, your town, but the town tends to say, hey, the reason the taxes are so high, if you ask the mayor and council, is because of the school. That's where all your tax money's going, right? So you need to be able to explain why that's a good thing. And it is a good thing. It is a good thing, right? Because we all know that our value in our homes, what is the first thing people do when they're looking for a home in a district? How's the school? How's the school? That even if you don't have children, how's the school? Because that drives your real estate value. Just some things to think about. You will need to be that good. You will need to know, you'll be able to have to answer quickly when asked what's so great about your district, and you need to passionately be able to expand on that. And then we'll talk separately about finance. You need to be well aware of what's happening on a finance level. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Yes. Your mic.
I have a loud mouth. Going back to the district mission,
Mhm.
is it appropriate or inappropriate to maybe create a poster and have it like here in the library or something like?
Of course. You want to make sure that it's available to everybody, not just that you know it yourself. You can put it on, I don't necessarily think it makes a difference. You can put it on your agendas. And again, it's why I always push the vision, because the vision is so much easier, right? Not that the mission isn't important, because it is, but the vision's just quicker to say, quicker to constantly, it becomes, to be honest with you, your vision is your brand. So I want you to think about, you're going to be marketing your district, and that's what it all comes down to. you are going to be out there selling your district if you have to go to vote on your budget. And in all honesty, you should. The schools tend to be the center of a community. There is a division now a little bit, right, for people that don't use the schools, even though it's still the center of your community, maybe they're not as in touch. You want to make sure that the whole community knows the value that you bring to your community. Because even if, my guess is that the rec groups end up using your school and there's, you're tied in a lot of different ways to your community that they may not be aware of now because they're kind of separated. You want to make sure your community knows how good your school is, what you do great, and why it's so important and why they should all support it. You want to do that before you have to go out and ask for money. You want to make sure that they're bought into you, and understand the importance, not wait until, and it is, this isn't a game. This is a reality. It's just not in front of them, right? You're not, playing a game with them. There is value here. They just may not be aware of it, and you need to make them aware of it. Okay. So boards and study had goals that change in achievement required fundamental changes in instructional practices. So goals focus on improved achievement and instruction. So your goals there should be something focused on student achievement. First of all, everything you do comes down to student achievement. I have boards that say, your question you should be asking yourself at the end of the evening, reviewing your agenda. What did I do today for the students? Literally, look at your agenda, take 5 minutes and think, what on here impacted the students? I'm going to be honest with you. You should be able to find something on every single thing that you did that impacts the student, because they do. You just need to be able to understand it and tie it back to it. Okay. If you're putting a new roof on, how does that affect the students? Well, a student sitting in a leaked classroom isn't going to be able to learn. So yeah, that roof is important to the students. So there's your example. Detailed knowledge of relationship of goals to curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Remain top priorities. No detractors for attention or resources. Expected to see results quickly as a result of improvement efforts. So one thing that you should be asking, especially during your budget process, right? If you have a goal, or you should be asking this obviously during your goal, if we're going to implement these things, are these sustainable? I heard tonight you're talking about changing curriculum, right? For K-5 for English. Is it sustainable? Are you going to be able to continue to purchase the items necessary to continue that curriculum? Because obviously if you can't, that's a problem. So those are the questions, and I'm not saying that they can't. They haven't answered the question. I'm just saying those are the things that need to go into your head, because we're no longer in a world of what are our wish lists. It's what do we need? There are no wish lists anymore in this economy. All right. So your goals need to align with that stuff, and you need to support those goals. So this is just something for you to reflect on. The question is, our board has established a written vision that commits to student achievement as the top priority of the school board, staff, and community. And then the question is, where are you? We don't have to do that right now. It's just something to think about. And it's something if you don't have the vision set, it's something you may want to do. And you could do that as a board, working with your administration, and come up with something. Again, it's branding. Our vision is clearly articulated and known to all stakeholders in the community. By the way, you are not required to have a vision, but you are required to have a mission. So you could always sub this out for your mission statement. And based on what we just said, there probably could be some work for that. But my perspective is, if you have a vision that kind of encompasses the direction of your mission, it's a little bit easier to remember, and it's a little bit easier to share. So how do we know that the district's vision and mission reflect the student achievement, expectations, and needs of the community? And how do we foster and guide community dialogue about the vision for our students in schools? Again, that's the sharing. These are things to contemplate. We don't have to answer these this evening, but feel free if you have any questions. It is something you may want to put on your list of things to have a conversation about at some point. Okay. Effective school boards are accountability driven, spending less time on operational issues and more time focused on policies to improve student achievement. Effective boards are data savvy. They embrace and monitor data even when the information is negative, and use it to drive continuous improvement. My background at one point was being a compensation specialist for Pfizer. And at the time, there was only a few of us, and I could tell you there was data up and down. Like, I had so much data to review, it's ridiculous. So anybody that works with data knows you can tell whatever story you want with that data. It all depends on how you spin it. The key here is if you have, and I hear this obviously in all the districts, our test scores are no good, our scores are abysmal, how are we going to improve them and stuff like that? Don't judge the data. Let the data drive what you're going to do. Don't get caught up in, oh, they just keep coming back with issues. The question isn't why are the test scores so low? That's not your question. The question is, what are we doing to improve those test scores? And how are we breaking down those groups? Because if you're looking at your whole numbers of test scores and everything's intertwined, you're not finding out. There could be one group in there pulling you down. And there might be a good reason for that. And more importantly, maybe it's easier to focus on that group that's pulling it down and the other ones are okay. So it's a matter of how you're managing that data. That's the point of this. And there's a story, I think they used to tell it in the old Governance 1 training. And it's about, I'm going to really mess this up, but I'm going to go with it anyway. There's an ice cream manufacturer professional. He has his own ice cream, the best in the country, he claims, et cetera, okay? And he makes ice cream, but he decides to get interested in the school boards and he's now engaged in public education and making schools run more efficiently, like a business model, yada, yada, yada. And he'd go out and he'd give all these presentations on how school districts could just do so much better if they listened to him and they ran it as a business because his business was so successful and his ice cream's the best ice cream there is and nobody's going to deny that. And he was giving a presentation and a teacher stood up and said, okay, let's talk about it. What's your best flavor? Let's just say it was blueberry. My blueberry ice cream is the best. People line up for it. Everybody wants it. There's not a better blueberry ice cream out there. And then she says, okay, great. So how do you pick your ingredient? Well, we only have the best ingredient. I get the best cream right from the cow, 24 hours old. I get the best sugar. I get the best blueberry. We go through those blueberries. We hand pick those blueberries and we pull out all the blueberries that are no good. Okay, great. Then she says, that's wonderful. And that's how you run your business and you make great ice cream. And that's great. Unfortunately, we don't pick our blueberries. We get all students, regardless of whether they're mushy blueberries, not ripe blueberries. You have to take all of your students into consideration. You don't have the luxury of treating this like a business and throwing out the bad blueberries. You can't throw away any blueberries. So it's just something to remember when you're doing this because you will hear this from the public. You will think it sometimes. If you're a business person, you'll hear it, especially if you have a finance person on your board. It's the go-to, but always remember that. You don't get to pick and choose who comes in here. You have to teach all your students, and they all deserve the same level of education and respect and all those other pieces. So just remember that when you look at those scores. It's not necessarily that there's something wrong with your blueberries. You just have to figure out how to work with those blueberries. Okay? And use your data to do that and make sure your administration is looking at it that way. Boards and studies clearly describe current levels of student performance, but describe in detail the type of data used, regularly monitor data and discussed at meetings, and use data to diagnose problems and take corrective action. So again, it comes down to the right questions when you're looking at that data. And you're not solving that problem. You're at a governance level that you are asking your administration to tell you how they're going to solve it, right? Your questions are geared towards what are they going to do to move this along? Why are we having these issues? Where are they? And how do we break it down so that we're doing the best thing possible for the students? Boards in the study held themselves and superintendent accountable for student performance progress, took policy role seriously, developed policies supporting instructional reforms, and focused on decisions that supported improved achievement rather than day-to-day operations. So which statement best applies here for you? Are you frequently monitoring achievement and progress toward district goals? Or B, hearing annual progress reports on achievement? So there's going to be two things that you're looking at here. You have your district goals and you have your board goals. Do you get, and you don't have to answer, you're not comfortable, do you get regular progress reports on your district goals? Okay. They're in your packet, probably toward the back of the supplemental material. Second last one. You'll see something like this, the board responsibilities. This is usually it's a school board 12-month agenda planning. Okay. Everybody should have this and you should keep it handy with your board stuff all the time. And if you look at it by month, you'll know what you should be expecting on your agenda for that month. And you'll see that built into that are goal updates. When you're getting updates on your district goals, you should also be doing updates on your board goals. And where are you? And again, it's okay. First of all, you are required to have district goals, but you are not required to have board goals. Board goals will make you more efficient, more effective, and okay. So things to remember, if goals are fluid, okay, goals can change. Remember COVID, right? When COVID came about, certainly nobody prepared for that. And I can guarantee you there are plenty of districts that did not meet any of their goals that they had planned prior to COVID. Doesn't mean that they didn't do an amazing job and step up and do phenomenal on a bunch of other things. So always keep that in mind. Sometimes the goals have to change a little bit. But even for yourself, monitoring it and accepting it, don't judge it. The only reason you should judge it is if you aren't looking at them, because what's the sense of creating goals just to look at them at the end to see, well, okay, we didn't do them. Well, you didn't do them because you weren't able to look at them, right? You weren't able to see your progress. And if you look like you can't get it done, it's okay. Just as long as you keep working towards it. Sometimes we don't make it by the deadline we need. Doesn't make you a bad group of people. Remember that paycheck you get at the end, right? Of the month. Okay. It's in the mail. There you go. What role do student achievement results play in evaluation of the superintendent? How does the board evaluate itself in terms of student achievement? And what are the system's rewards and consequences for success and failure? Mhm. All right, so, okay. New Jersey School Board Association has the board self-evaluation. Have you ever done that? Okay, so that will incorporate it. There's a bunch of different pieces in there that ask those questions. Remember, everything ties back to student achievement, right? If you're keeping the facilities up, if you're doing the things that you need to do. But more importantly, you evaluate the superintendent, and there's definitely factors in there that look at student achievement. You can tie some of your goals. Personally, I would say if you're reviewing data and you're evaluating your superintendent on the student achievement, right, with your data and seeing progress, you're doing your job. That is part of it. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied into your specific board goals. But the other thing too, if this board is running as a cohesive board and an effective board, and you're making decisions that move student achievement along, and again, remember, most, if not everything on your agenda should tie back to student achievement, that's your answer. I would recommend, if you really want to track it, not to give your administration more work, but something to consider that I recommend for boards, when you come up with your board goals, you're going to categorize like BG1, BG2, BG3, your board goal. Your district goals, DG1, D1, D2, D3. Anything on your agenda that would apply to those goals can just be coded. You can go back over your year agendas and see how many times was there something related to a goal, right? Is there anytime something on that agenda touches on one of your goals? And you'd be surprised how often that will happen. But it gives you the ability to really know when you sit here, oh, we're hitting it tonight. We're definitely, yeah.
Can that be done within committees instead of the agenda?
I would say both. You could do it on your committee. I mean, the major agenda is probably easier because it's taking into effect what your entire board is doing. If you have one committee doing all the work, right? Then maybe it's not affecting all the board members.
Right now, we get updates, the superintendent gives us updates on district goals. I'd say at least quarterly, maybe a little more frequent than that, maybe every other month. We get, in committee, and he also mentions them in the board meeting. We haven't done that where having him just put a little asterisk or something like that on individual agenda items. That might be a nice little touch.
And I'd highlight them and I'd save them. I'd go back
Yeah.
and look at them. The reason it's great for the superintendent is because that's going to be part of, when you do your CSA evaluation, there is supporting documentation, right? That helps them stay on track from that perspective. So that's one way of doing it. Again, I'm not looking to give your administration more work.
That's
So
what I'm,
just tread lightly with that.
yeah.
But it's really just a thinking process and adding D1, D2. An example is I have a district that decided they want to go out and do a demographic study. They haven't done it in a long time. So I said, okay, there's a perfect example. If you're going to do that, you're going to go out for bid on that. You're going to have that on your agenda. You're going to have the opening, you're going to have the awarding. You're going to have where the process is. And every time that's going to be board goal 1, on there. It's a process. It's a way to document it without doing a lot of extra work. And more importantly, you as a board will see it on a regular basis.
So who would put the, the B, G, 1, 2, 3 on the main agenda?
Your board secretary
The
and
board
superintendent,
secretary.
because they create the agenda. I mean, they create it in collaboration, but they're the ones physically writing it up. And again,
Yeah, I think.
I
we-
don't want
I
you to
think we wa-
surprise them. They're not here, so
Yeah. No,
it's just something I'm throwing out there.
we'll bring it up. It's additional work, but he really does have the district goals front and front and foremost at all times. Yes, so I don't think,
District goal, yes.
I think Janet's right. I think he might love that idea, yeah.
So the district goal, yes, but then the board goals, he would do also. The board goals, so then us
Yeah, so
and the board secretary would put that information on the main agenda, right? On the final agenda.
So
Okay.
your board president can bring that up. I assume you're in the agenda meeting, right? In the agenda planning meeting, say, oh, that's one of our board goals. So just put that there. If you miss one or whatever, this isn't about being perfect on it. It's just something to remind you of what you're doing so that you're hitting your goals. And then, you know what? If you don't see it for a while, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. What are we doing? I haven't seen that in a while. Are we staying on top of it? That's more important. That it just might be the reminder that we need to be doing it. If training is one of your board goals, anytime you have training, and it doesn't mean just me, right? It doesn't mean that. Or if being data savvy is part of, and reviewing student achievement, and that you're going to have those reports from your superintendent, mark it on your thing so you know how many times you touched on that. Okay? Okay. Okay, effective boards align and sustain resources such as professional development to meet district goals. So you'll hear that you're having, and you will approve professional development. Make sure you understand how the professional development is relating to your student achievement. Make sure you can tie it back, right? If you hear they're doing something, get a little bit more information on the impact of that. Similar to if you're tonight talked about a new curriculum. If you're approving a new curriculum, make sure that you mark on your calendar or something that you want to make sure that you get an update in 6 months. How is that rollout going? And then in a year, what do we think the impact of that was? And then the next year, because obviously it's going to take a while for that to take root and have an impact. But those are fair questions because you're approving the change in curriculum. But do you go back and say, okay, well, how did that go? I remember when I was on the board, it was Go Math was a big thing and everybody hated it. And parents were calling and complaining like, why is this new math? Why is it done totally different? I don't understand this. It's math. How is this happening? There was so much pushback. And I could tell you as I sat on that board, I couldn't tell you. I just knew I heard complaints over and over again. I didn't realize back then that's something I should be doing. Hey, wait a minute. What is the impact? How are the kids? How's it affecting their grade? Right? We knew how it was. I could tell you how it was affecting the parents. I knew that for sure. That was definite. And also keep in mind, the way it affects the parents is not necessarily the way it affects the students. Another big thing that came out when it used to be the testing, park testing, I think was the time, they keep changing the names, and it went to computers, right? And we were going to go, well, parents were up in arms, right? Like, my kid is going to have no idea how to do that. And I know in our district, our superintendent did multiple presentations on it, showing all the complexities of it. And parents, how are my kids going to know what to do with this? Well, I can assure you, they had no problem at all because they're really good at that. But the parents were having a nervous breakdown because they would not be able, well, I can't type. So, the kids can't type. How are they going to be able to answer these questions? What are they going to do? How are they going to know to move this thing around the screen? No problem at all. No problem. Definitely much more problem for the parents. So again, is it the best thing for the student? Again, that could go into debate still too, but, okay, take responsibility for the core business of education, instruction, committed to sustaining reform over the long haul. Change takes time. That's why I'm saying, just make sure you're following up on it. It's easy to lose track. You started a curriculum, it's easy to lose track of it a year later when 50,000 things are hitting the fan, right? Because you know, things are just happening. Make sure you make notes and you go back and you check yourself. Support extensive research-based professional development for teachers as a way to implement needed changes in instruction. You talked about it this evening, AI. That's huge, right? And there's going to be teachers that have been teaching for 20 years that are like, I don't want any part of this, right? And that's understandable. That's human nature. But the question is, what's best things for the students? Those students are going to need it. So the teachers are going to have to figure out how and how they're going to get comfortable with it and how they're going to do it. You cannot teach students the same as it started 20 years ago. And I'm not implying that any teachers are doing that. I'm just saying that is the role of the board to make sure if there's resistance, it's understandable. How are we going to work through it? Because the reality is AI is here and we can turn it into a bad thing, right? Or we can embrace it in a way that's beneficial for students to learn, right? And how they're going to use it. It's not fair to say we're not going to let you have it. And once you're out of school, good luck. It's just not fair. I like to think about it. I couldn't put it into place when it happened, but just think, right? When you could start Googling things, right? And we go back and show how old I am right now. And I remember we had an encyclopedia set. I was like the coolest kid as far as I was concerned because I had my own encyclopedia set and I didn't have to go to the library like some kids, right? But think about how old that encyclopedia set was after a couple of years. And here I am thinking, oh, Hawaii mighty. And, it's old as could be. The same thing with, now you have the internet. Don't use that because you have no idea. But what you do is you teach the kids to check what your sources are and make sure that you're using good information. It's not just about don't use it. How do you use it? All right, allocated resources to priorities, including teacher professional development, even in a tight budget time. So you may not have the money in your budget to do professional development. Think outside the box. There's always ways to do that, right? And it might be that different teachers take on different pieces of it. Limited improvement initiatives, so those that could be adequately supported and said no to initiatives that would distract from improvement efforts. So just don't waste money on initiatives you can't sustain. Our board allocates resources to a limited set of specific priorities for improving student achievement that give everyone in the district clear focus. Where do you stand on that? And again, we don't have to go into that now. These are things to contemplate. Our staff training is designed exclusively to support our student achievement priority. Think about effective school boards have a collaborative relationship with staff and community and establish a strong communication structure to inform and engage both internal and external stakeholders in setting and achieving district goals. Collaborative relationships does not mean that you go and meet with the staff and ask how they're doing. Just a heads up on that so that there's no confusion. Effective school boards lead as a united team with the superintendent, each from their respective roles with strong collaboration and mutual trust. That goes to the no surprises. Boards in the study speak with one voice about improvements. We've talked about this. Sought a superintendent who shares their vision for the improvement, connected with district staff leadership, and build public will for the vision of success and the sense of urgency and responsibility for improvements. So we've covered all this, right? Making sure that you're able to speak to the community. How can we build on what teachers already do to create partnerships in the community that enrich the instructional program? Again, that community partnership is going to be massive. And it sounds like one of your goals that your superintendent has is obviously to work on that, which is perfect timing because it really is going to be important. It's also important as board members that you're here. So it was good to hear that it's on the evenings of your board meetings. One thing I will tell you, everybody wants turnout for board meetings. You don't want turnout for board meetings. You like a room like this. You will like an empty room. It means that you're doing a good job, number one. And more importantly, I always like to say your board meeting should be thought of as an interrogation room, like you see on Law and Order, where everybody's standing on the other side of that glass, because the idea is transparency. The idea is for the public to see what you're doing. And if they choose to, it's for a trust factor more than anything, that you're not doing anything behind closed doors that's secretive and stuff like that. If your community has confidence in you, you don't have a full room. However, that being said, what they do want to hear and what they do want to know is the forums that you're having where your administration is running it, right? Where your administration is teaching them or giving them the state of school address, which was mentioned. That's really important. And it shouldn't be coming from board members. It should be coming from your administration because they're the ones that the parents and the community want to hear from. They're the ones doing the job. You being there is an important part of that. So also just be careful on that and check with your attorney to make sure that you might have to open, if everybody's there, whether or not that's going to be an issue for you for public meetings. Just circle back on that, because if you have a full quorum for that, do you need to open it as a public meeting in advance? Just something to think about. I don't have the list above my pay grade. What alliances and collaborations would most advance student achievement goals and objectives in our district? So how can you engage your community and with your students? Do we engage in legislative issues? All right, so as a board, you take an oath to follow the ethics. And the first tenet of the ethics is that you will support and implement state mandated and initiatives and laws. So in this day and age, when there's a lot of political pushback, some board members, when they come on the board, especially candidates that come on the board and don't understand that, will think that they're going to push their, they don't like this in the curriculum, they don't like these books in the library. You know, those are the current public political pushes. Just remember that you take an oath to approve state mandates. That doesn't mean that you don't have a role in legislative issues. As a board member, especially if you go to county meetings for the association, the association is New Jersey School Board Association is an association of board members. I feel like one of the most least understood part of that is, as board members, you have a voice. We're basically your voice, the association. If there's things that you don't like coming back from legislators, that's your opportunity to get everybody together and speak as a whole of board members. So we could talk about that separately, but that is an opportunity. My point is, making a stand at the table for something that's mandated is only going to end up working against your students and your district. Not because it's not important, but because when it's gotten to that point, technically you're supposed to approve it and mandate it, if it's mandated, rather. So again, if you have any questions on any of these things, I could keep you here all night, and that is not my goal. So I'm just touching on some things, and that was the point of this whole presentation. There's so many factors in here that most of us don't think of as board members and in what our roles are. But don't ever hesitate to give me a call and we can talk about these things. And then I can always come back and talk about any topic in more detail with you when you have time. Okay, effective school boards take part in team development and training to build shared knowledge, values, commitments for their improvement efforts. So you can take training individually, but training as a board is always more beneficial because you all hear the same thing. And if there's a question, you all work together and you hear the answers to that. And also how it affects you as a board can be responded to. How often does your board engage in whole board development with the entire board participating and training together? 80% of boards in survey have whole board learning experience twice a year or more. So you're good already because this is my second time in. So, oops. But you could always do better. And by the way, when I come in, my goal is always to really have an effect. I'm not here so you check a box and just say, oh yeah, we did that. I really want it to be something that you want to hear about and something you want to engage in. And again, I respect your time and I know how exhausting this is. So reflect on your board superintendent team. We're not going to do this. This is what we would do if we had more time. And it's something that we can talk about another time. We could always go back to this. Pick 2 to 3 traits that are strengths. Share evidence. I mean, I think that's really important. And it's one of the things that we talked about early on, that it all comes back to that you're able to say what's so great about this district. Pick 1 to 2 traits to focus on in the future that need improvement, and pick 1 to 2 danger signs to be diligent about and avoid in the future. So this is a special thank you to National School Boards Association because it was based on their study. And if everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. So make the commitment to work together to move your district forward to positively impact achievement. Can't read. But those are your students, because that's a reminder for what you are doing here. And that was your district goals. Now, board goals. Do we want to take a minute to talk about those? I
Yeah,
know
I
you're
think-
all tired.
You know, I mean, we're real tired. Do we want to take a 5-minute break and then at least broach this topic? I know we're all tired, but since we're here, I'd hate to let this opportunity go by. All right, so let's take a 4-minute break.
4 minute.
4 minutes.
4-minute,
not
3-minute break. Let's take a brief break and then push through. And again, you know, I guess as we're still in the room, two things that I'm reflecting on is that one, we are a really highly functional board. Like we check off on many of these items, and the items that we don't fully check off are items that like we'd like to improve on or we could do better, but like we really are a highly functional board, and we don't have to have really detailed, extensive board goals. We can, you know, um,
Sure.
okay. Jenny, I didn't shut. Oh, okay.
I went through the same thing. There's actually asterisks on my slide at one time too. But that's just, they're just key.
Oh, okay.
They're just key.
Okay.
No secret sauce there.
The area?
Excuse me?
You live in the area?
I live in Old Can.
Oh.
Yep, that's the, I sat on the little. Right. All right. So we have your board goals on the blue sheet from last year. And so there is also nothing wrong with rolling those forward if you haven't necessarily met them to the degree that you'd want. So the first one was strengthening board capacity through targeted professional development to enhance effectiveness in governance and oversight as we will engage in structured development throughout the year with the focus on finance, policy, and student achievement. So that's definitely something that I can come in and help you with, any of those subjects or all of those subjects. And I highly recommend doing finance and budget because you need to be comfortable with that next year because it's going to be a difficult year. Each year is just going to get harder and harder. And it's making sure you know the basics and also knowing when to kick it off with somebody else. Like when do you send questions to your BA as opposed to dealing with it with yourself, for yourself. So understanding that. And I will tell you, there are plenty of board members that are very good in certain areas and then try to avoid finance, and that's normal. But I can help you understand the things that you should understand and the questions you should be looking at from a governance perspective. So goal 2 was revisit and where appropriate, refine committee structure to improve communication and oversight. You can let me know how you feel about that. And strategic planning is the last one, and I'm not sure where you are on that, but I can talk to you about that a little bit too. There, you have, first of all, I do want to say, yeah, that's the summary. I saw your goals. They're very, very detailed. Yeah.
Doing a strategic plan, a formal strategic plan can be very difficult for the administration. And what we decided was that we were going to learn more about what strategic planning entailed. And at least 2 of us went to the strategic planning workshop at school boards. And I know when I spoke to Diane afterwards, we were like, yeah, I don't think we should do strategic planning. Because the world is changing so fast that for us to spend as much time, and especially the administrators' time, to come up with a strategic plan, then a year and a half from now, AI makes, computers irrelevant or something like that, or COVID happened, is that very few 5-year strategic plans even look relevant after 2 or 3 years. So we decided to back off of that, especially now that we're still getting our feet under us.
And let me just add in there 2 things. That's perfectly good for a goal. Like if you decide you've done your research, you have it as a goal, and then you change. That's why I said goals are fluid. So that's definitely a way to go. And you've met that goal if you've gone through that process. I will give you a little background on strategic planning because obviously I'm a big fan of it. Just so you know, school boards does it, and it is an added fee, and it's $4,500, and it's facilitating the entire process. And there's 2 different plans to it. And the one I'm talking about is the lesser plan, meaning the less involved. There's one like it's a weekend plan, and it's much more difficult for the administration to manage versus the other one is like a 6-month plan, and it's 3 input sessions with the public. And it's a process, right? And it goes through getting the public's feedback to drive the direction of the school strategic plan. It's not that it's really getting a feel for your public. But at the end of the day, it does leave the whether or not you're going to move forward with those specific goals will be left to the board to approve, and the administration decides how it's carried out. It is not decided by the public, which is a big deal because, as we all know, the board should not be running the district, nor should the public be running the district. It is the administration and how they're going to make things happen. But what I will tell you is the feedback I've received from the ones that I have physically done, not to mention obviously that I know about school boards has done, it's a very, almost want to say remedial process because it works out well where the public all gets to give their feedback and they talk and then they learn a lot about the district. It's a very good community engaged process. You may not be ready for it, and I get that. I just wanted you to know that there are a lot of pros if you want to involve your public and if you want to engage them. And it's a path forward. The goals are very broad. So they can go in a lot of different directions, but the outcome is what's the common themes? What are you hearing from your public? So that's all I want to say. If you decide to go down that road down the future, and you could check this box off for your goals if you've done the homework, but I can come in and I can give you a little bit more detail into the process.
Yeah, when we go, for those of us who go to school boards, we can sit through the workshop. We can commit to sitting through the workshop on the street.
But I can give you a presentation on it here
Or-
in about,
yeah.
in a 30-minute time frame. I can give you an overview. So, all right, one of the things I will tell you, every district has to pay by statute, membership dues, right? For the association. You need to take advantage of as much as we can offer you. And again, I'm not telling you this, $4,500 isn't a lot of money, but it's also might not be money within your budget, and that's fair. And I'm not trying to say anything about that, but we give so many things to you as part of your dues. So take full advantage of them. If there's something you want to learn, go down to school board workshop and do it, but also know I can come here and give you just about anything you want as a group. I can come to you. Somebody once said, it's like having a gym membership and not going, right? Because you're paying for it every month, but you don't go, but it's actually worth, because it's like having a personal trainer you pay for, because I'll come to you.
So it might be best for us to, the two of us can schedule throughout the next year, a workshop on finance, a workshop on strategic planning, and a workshop on student achievement.
It's finance and budget go together.
yeah. Finance and budget.
Can I ask, in terms of finance and budget, how many different workshops or, are there specifically on finance and budget? There
School
have
boards?
to be different levels of them? Because I feel like now I'm on the board, I don't know, too long. I've been to a lot,
Mhm.
but then it ends up feeling like, well, I heard this already, and so
Right.
then I tune out, and I might miss the one new
tidbit that you
piece
didn't
because
get,
I've
yeah.
tuned out already.
Yeah.
So are there okay, this is my first presentation, this is what I need to hear, but now for some of us who have been through it and have, kind of suffered through learning it on our own, is there something more?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And I'm going to tell you, it's one of my goals that I came out of my training thing for is to have certain training programs that are progressive. That wasn't one of my list. I'm not going to lie. However, I will be presenting, at workshop on finance and the questions you have to ask and things like that. So when it comes to finance, there's probably not going to be multiple levels. But what I would recommend that you do is bring to the table the questions that you have, because that's what grows. One of the things I did it at a district the other day. And one of the questions that came up was about the treasurer's report and, your treasurer versus your board secretary and your BA and all that kind of stuff. And it was an interesting conversation. And sometimes it's something I won't even have an answer to, which then I will now add into my presentation process. So it does evolve based on that kind of feedback. But the goal is, even if it's a basic presentation, if you have more detailed questions, I will either be able to answer them, or I will get you the answers, or your BA, if is in the room, will also expand on that. But I doubt finance will ever, there'll probably be trainings within school boards, especially with what's to come, with much more detailed and higher level, but probably not to present to a board as a whole.
Maybe we can do is the month before we're scheduled, like, let's say we're going to do finance and budget in November. Well, in October, I can get to the board a questionnaire, solicit questions from the board on finance and budget, where you think you're strong, or parts of the agenda, are just silly numbers.
Because I just feel like, particularly with finance and budget, you don't know what you don't know, right? And then until you find out because it blows up for whatever
It's in
reason,
the
right?
newspaper.
Like.
And you also, you also may not know what you forgot. Or like, oh yeah, I forgot to keep doing that, or I wasn't paying attention to
Yeah,
that.
you know,
Um,
like, I don't know, like, it just, there's a lot of detail to it, and then, I still feel like 4 or 5 years in, and I've been paying close attention, um, it's still like, oh, crap, I didn't know that,
And I do get that feedback from the presentations that I've been given. It just might be one thing that you get out of it, especially if you've been on the board for a while. But the key to it is, as an experienced board member, your questions are going to help raise the bar for everybody else or help bring in something that we may not be thinking of. But in general, you're going to want to keep it on especially with finance, on a basic to mid-level, or else you're going to lose the room. I feel like finance is one of those things that a lot of people will, as soon as you say, we're going to talk finance, immediately it's like, "Ooh, this isn't going to be for me." And I'm one of those people. I'm not going to lie. I'm one of those people. So,
But Dr., the same would be true, if we were talking about facilities and somebody came in and talked to us about boilers for an hour. Like,
absolutely.
at a certain point, like, oh, we're gonna glaze over.
And the important thing is not that you should be able to know where to dive into if you're a finance person and you want to get a little bit more into the weeds, especially during budget planning timing. But in general, you're not supposed to be a finance expert, nor are you supposed to be a boiler expert, right? That's why you depend on the individuals, but you are governance. You need to become an expert on governance over time. And that's where our focus is. So what are the questions you should be asking? So when it comes to finance and budget, are you getting a regular update on on your student enrollment versus your staffing? Are you looking regularly at how many staff members you have and where those numbers are going versus your student enrollment? If your student enrollment's going down and your staffing is going up, that's a question from a governance level. Those are the things that you're looking at. And again, that doesn't even mean that there's something wrong with it. It's just a question. It's a question to say, why is this happening? I wanted to put together a focus for board members, because I think as new board members come on, or even seasoned board members, and you hear about the things that are happening in the different districts, such as Hackensack and Montclair, and you're sitting here thinking, oh no, am I missing something? Am I going to be in the news? Am I going to be the person sitting there that everybody thinks just completely
Dirty work.
mishandled? Right? I mean, that's what we all think in this role. And you don't want to be that person, but you can't go the opposite direction of over micromanaging either. So where does that fall? And that's where the focus needs to be. What are the things I should be looking at? What are the flags that I need to pay attention to? And that's one of the big ones that came out of Hackensack. And they're public meetings, and they're board members just like you. But if you go, they had a meeting in December, I think it was December, and they had the auditor. They had brought in an outside auditor, and that auditor spoke for about 30 minutes. I mean, the meeting was like 7 hours, I think, but he spoke for 30 minutes. And if you go back and look at it, he spoke so well. And I probably learned more from watching that than anything else I've ever done. And he clearly explained the two big things were, again, the staffing going up while the numbers of students are going down. And it was over a period of time, as well as the issue with COVID money, right? You can't use COVID money to pay staff. You never could, because that money runs out. And now the money's gone. And what do? You can't sustain it. And that's why we talked about sustainability. That's a key. And again, this is not me judging Hackensack. Please don't, they know I talk about them when I talk about this, because I think they learned a lot. And you cannot lose sight of the fact that you did not go to school to be a board member. You did not, that is not your background, and it shouldn't be. It's how the system is made. But you should be, while you're sitting on the board, growing as best you can and getting, there's checks and balances to everything. There are checks and balances, but what's your part in that?
So I have a question. When talking about finance, would it help us as a board if we understood better our budget?
Mhm.
To kind of understand more the finance piece of it.
Yeah, well, they go hand in hand.
But how do we go about, like, can we ask our BA to give us a 1 hour presentation on how our budget is broken down?
Yeah, you also could meet with your BA, because everybody's going to have different levels, right, of how much they want to know and how deep they want to get into it. it is perfectly acceptable for you to spend some time as a board member to sit down with your BA and get a full understanding of how it works and ask those questions. What you do not want to do is look at the bills list and say, that landscaping bill looks awfully high. My guy's so much cheaper. Why are we using this person? That is going into the weeds. That is, but that doesn't mean when you see a transfer of money or you do see a line item that you don't understand and it's like $5,000, it's fair to ask that question. That is part of what you do. And that's fine. It's how you ask the question and how often you ask the question. And that you're not offering up, but I have a guy that could do it so much better. That is definitely, that's the example of the worst case scenario.
So I think I just want to propose, so if we take these three topics for that targeted trainings goal, take these three topics, we solicit questions from the board before school boards comes in and does a training. We also get questions afterwards, like what parts are you still unclear about? Where do you wish we did more? And possibly have more training on that. And then if we also come up with a meet the BA sort of schedule. I know when I first got on the board, I met with Mr. Tevis, and he took about an hour with me and showed me every page. And, I never understood it well enough to teach it, but I understood it at the time well enough to look at it and kind of have a feeling for what I was looking for. And so we could also arrange that, and it might be a good way for us to meet the new BA anyway.
All of the different topics that they can teach us.
Yeah.
My suggestion would be, why don't we look at this and pick a bunch over here and go
Well,
from
we
there?
have three that we have finance and budget, student achievement, and strategic planning. If we want more, we can get more.
How often do you find a board retreat held this way compared to other ways?
Usually it's done, yeah, at a resort with open bar, right? And then you learn a lot. No, but seriously, this is the typical retreat. And sometimes boards don't publicize them, don't record them, so that you're a little bit more comfortable in diving into things. But either way, this is a good forum. But we can also break things down and do them when you have meetings that have less agendas. You'll know your time of year when you can do that, where we can do trainings. The key to it is that you're comfortable, like we're doing this evening. The point of a retreat and why we did the topic we did is that you're comfortable to talk to me and ask questions, that you're comfortable with learning, because you're not, if I stand up, I think the first time I came in here, there was a lot of me lecturing and not having a conversation. You need to be comfortable to have that conversation. And if you're not comfortable asking the question because it is a public forum and there's a question, write it down and follow up with me the next day and give a phone call if you feel a little bit more comfortable doing it that way, because the key is that you get out of it something. It's not checking the box to say, yep, we did our training. We had school board come in 3 times. That's a waste of your time. It's a waste of my time. And it's not a benefit to you. I want to come out. I mean, I hope this evening you got something, some tidbit. And it's usually just the tidbits. It's not necessarily that your whole view has changed, but it's like, oh, I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that. I forgot about that. That's the goal of why I'm here. Because again, this is, your volunteer role, but it's a really important one. So, and again, if anything I can do to make it easier on you, that's the whole point of school board association and the training, and making it as easy for you as possible. So, yeah.
And the reason I asked was previous board retreats that I attended, they were an all-day, an 8-hour event, and every board member was asked to select one topic, and each topic was addressed for a half hour. And we were given a small smidgen of this to understand those areas that we had particular concern for. It was not held here, it was held at a retreat facility, and they provided us with breakfast and lunch. It was pretty nice. And I think we got a tremendous amount out of that. I was just curious if other boards did that or if this was a typical thing.
Who ran that? Do you know?
School boards.
It was. Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Sorry?
that train. Yeah.
Yeah.
Governance one is great. New board member orientation is the best. Yeah. And if you can get in on that, that's a good one. And it's a lot of interaction. But typically, no, retreats aren't done that way, even though we come and we facilitate them. They're usually run by the district. I would hesitate to do an 8-hour retreat because getting, again, volunteers, the extra time and engagement, although I do think training wise like that, if you sign up for it, we do offer, school boards offers weekend training sessions on certain things. They have the leadership ones and things like that. And of course, workshop. It's really the definition of workshop, right? Getting down there and getting as much training as possible. I would prefer to see you tell me what you want and let me come in and let's dedicate an hour to each session. And I love the idea of you, and now I'm going to use it for any other training I do, to ask for any questions on the topic in advance so I can make sure I'm hitting them. And, you know, to your point, I think 8 hours of listening to something by the time you get, I don't like to do a retreat for more than 3 hours. I feel like you lose people. But I also think it takes more than an hour to get momentum. But if we build, like we have built a relationship now that I hope you're comfortable with asking me questions and know I'm going to give you honest answers. And sometimes we can agree to disagree. And sometimes it's not something that's going to work for your board. And those are all things that you need to take into consideration because I'm giving you an overview. And I'm also having the opportunity to get some best practices from other boards. So there's some things that other boards might be doing that you're not doing that, oh, that's a great idea. Let's just put that in. Try it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But yeah, I do think it's a good idea to, and if there's something you're looking at that list and there's other things that we can do. If you look at that list or you think of something that's not on that list, let me know. I can find you information and pull it together and we can talk about it. I'm happy to come in and do it.
And John, we can also add, you know, like, I mean, my goal is just to come away with a goal or two. I'm going to put it together. I'm going to put it out to the board for your feedback. If somebody wants to add anything else or sees another topic or another structure, this is a living document, so we're not married to it.
I'm also going to encourage you, and I know we talked about it before I started this evening about board certification, that you consider that. Board certification is to be a certified board where you will get like a little plaque and you get awarded for it. It's over a period of time, but it's basically 16 hours of training. So it'll be a couple of years, but it could be a goal of yours. The only thing I'm going to tell you is you need at least 7 board members. It's usually 7 out of 9. I have to go back and find out what it means for 10, but I think it's 7. So I will follow up on that. But you have to have 7 out of 9. It's like goes down from there, 5 out of 7 and 4 out of 5 board members for it to count. And you also need your superintendent. And the reason for that is you operate as a team. And that's the point of the training that your superintendent be here for. It doesn't make the training any less valuable if you do it and you don't have everybody. So, you know, that's just some things to consider. And I'm flexible that if we put a date on the calendar, sometimes it's hard to get dates on the calendar. If we put them up in advance and you find you're not going to have enough people and you want to hold it off because you don't want to waste the topic. Yeah. Meaning until you have everybody and you're working towards that, it's just something to consider. And it is really good for you to go out there and say, we've done this. Like, I think that's an important badge of honor because it's taking time to advance yourself on governance and understanding. And if the board's learning these things together, it's that much more valuable than individual board members being certified board leaders. Those are important too, and they're great. But learning together is a big difference. It's a big difference then. So just something to consider as well. You're going to do it. If we can get the credit for it, let's do that too. So where we are on board goals now is we're going to talk about training. In all honesty, that could be you could have one goal. And I'm not, because there's a lot of different pieces of information that we're talking about here. It's a huge goal. You know, it's training and it's exploring more things. And you have a list of them and the key is every time I come in, you make the point to say, this isn't part of our board goal. You know, you have a lot on your plate. And that's a large amount of training that we were just talking about with those 3 things. And we can expand on that. I'd recommend student achievement being one of your topics. And again, we don't have to do them all in one shot and they don't all have to happen in 1 year, right? But there's different pieces and then you take what you want.
Our board meetings are typically pretty short, sometimes under an hour. So I don't think it'd be a big deal for us to add a half-hour training on the end of one or even an hour training.
I'd recommend giving 45 minutes to it because that gives you a little bit of the overview plus questions and answers that you allocate for that. The other thing I'd recommend is the second goal is maybe a board self-evaluation. Because why I feel that's important, you will get even more information out of that in what the board's looking for in development and what you think you do well and what you think you can improve on. So
We have to wait till I mean,
you can do
we
whatever.
just hop onto the calendar for board self-evaluation. I don't know, happens like in May or something like that.
You can do it at any point. We could do it in the fall. You decide. At this point, if you're going with your board goals now, I would say we're going to do it next spring, right? Because you're going to also, it's kind of like doing the CSA evaluation. You're going to have your board goals first, and then you're evaluating on different aspects of how you function as a board and how your governance is. So those two things, I would hold off. I'd put it on here, and we'll do it towards the end of, towards the spring of next year.
Our goal is going to be targeted training. Our goal is going to be us doing targeted training on finance and budget, student achievement, strategic planning to begin with. Any other topics we can add to that? To have school boards come in, to prep school boards with questions that we may have specific, and also to do a debrief afterwards as to what areas we still need more training in. And then to also facilitate meeting with the BA, as many of us can meet with the BA for an hour session where he opens up the books and says, this is how I do this is how I do that. This is what the check register is. This is what these transfers mean. And just go through the books in a kind of a,
And then also add your board self-evaluation.
and then board self-evaluation.
And that's an easy goal.
Yeah.
But it's really important. I don't want to, miss out on that because you evaluate your superintendent evaluates your staff. It's walking the talk, evaluate yourself.
Have a list of what we have to do to become certified, what classes we have to take.
Those do apply towards it.
Those
like-
do apply towards it. I
Yeah,
think a lot of us, sorry to interrupt, a lot of us probably have it. You just have to go to New Jersey school boards and then look at the transcripts and then look where you are.
But that's individual. That's individual training.
But in order for us to have it, 4 or 5 of us have to have it individually, correct?
No.
That's what you said?
Nope. Nope. No. You can individually have certifications and
Okay.
I encourage that, right? That's going to trainings, it's going to county meetings. There's a bunch of different criteria.
Yes.
But to be certified as a board, the criteria is based on 16 hours of training
Okay.
as a board, right?
So
There's a
these
couple
would
of other
count.
things in there too. That's the general rule. There's a couple of other things.
So then those hours
These-
count towards,
Wait, one at a time.
those hours count towards the individual?
No. Board is separate than individual.
So you're talking about like a certified board member compared to the certified school board,
Yeah,
right?
they're two
So
different things.
Do these classes, like ones Ricardo was just mentioning, would those count towards our 16 hours?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
And that's why I'm saying, take advantage of it if you're going to do it anyway. The key has to be, you have to have the majority of the board here, as I mentioned, I think it's 7 out of 9. And you also have to have your superintendent here. That does make a difference.
That's going to be goal 3 is going to be looking into board certification.
Well, you don't even have to look into it. Well, I mean, you can put it down. But we just covered it. It's whether or not, it's taking advantage of the training to make sure that it goes towards that. It's just an added benefit. You're doing the training anyway. Let's get the credit for it. That's the way I'm looking at it, not so much.
It's going to be really easy. No.
No. And it's a 4-year period. So over 4 years, you need the 16 hours. If you get it in 2 years, like tonight will count towards it. No, it won't. Sorry. Again, Super's not here. My bad. Sorry. It could have. It counted towards it. And when you do your board self-evaluation, that's another factor, doing a board self-evaluation. So that's fine. That's easy. Also, when you do your board self-evaluation, I'll come in and we'll go over the findings. I'll do a summary. And I will do it during public session if you want me to. I don't have to. You will all see the compiled list and the details, but I'll give an overview of it. And then what'll fall out of that is what you're looking for more development in. And we can come up with suggestions for that. But if I'm here that's usually like a 20-minute visit, that's half hour towards your training, if you have enough people here. Anytime I come in and we're talking about something and learning about something, it qualifies. If you come up with a topic that's not on this list, but we spend the time and you learn from it, that counts. That's board development.
So if we, you said we have to do it in 4 years?
It's over 4 years, so yeah, if
It's like
the
4
training
hours.
that happened
Yeah.
falls off after 4 years, so your hours change. It's a rolling 4-year time.
How does change of board members affect that? So we have 7 of the 9 people attending, and then we replace 3 board members, and they haven't had any training. Does that then impact the certification of the board?
No, if there's a significant changeover of your board, that is a factor, and I have to go back and look at it, but I mean, we're talking about like you have a complete changeover in your board over a period of time, but regular turnover is not an issue. And again, that's part of the difference between individuals
Right.
certification versus board. And learning as a board, you're still growing as a board.
And besides like a pat on the back for us, if we get the certification as a board, like, is that, you
How
know,
many boards are certified?
I mean, is that on their website?
I
Is
don't
that
know
like?
the answer to that, but I will get that for you.
like
And I'm,
few-
I'm working on making it a lot more.
A few, a lot?
There's a handful. I don't have a lot. Yeah.
So, so it would make us look very good if we did this, right?
It's going to make you look good regardless because you can say that and you know, that's part of the whole high functioning boards and that's a piece of it and explain why that's important. But even more so, it's really good for you. And it's okay that you know, unfortunately, the board that gets the certification is the board that's here when you have the 16 hours. So unfortunately, there may be some people that worked hard on it and are no longer on the board, or you may have a new board member who didn't do much of anything, but still gets to be there for it. It's because remember, the board is the board. It's not based on the individuals. It's based on the board. And if there's enough of you and there's a majority because you're not having a complete turnover of the board, you filter that out to your board members and how you function. So-
And I think, you know, again, I say it all the time, this board is really, really high functioning. We've done some pretty incredible things over the past couple of years. And not because we all agree, but because we believe in the process and we abide by those 8 rules of high functioning boards. But, you know, you never know what happens tomorrow and what kind of stressors happen to the district and what kind of conflicts come up or struggles. And so the more we know and the better we're situated, we can be prepared for that. One of the big ones is, again, that AI is a big thing that's going to come our way that could transform education. And the other thing is, as you said a couple of times, the finances and the burden that's coming our way to every district in New Jersey is going to be significant.
Yeah, the 2 things that are going to be really important for you to be able to speak to are student achievement and finance. Those are going to be key. And you need to be comfortable with it. And that's what we need to make sure that you're at least at a comfort level. And again, doesn't make you an expert. You have administration for that, but that you are showing that you're knowledgeable. The person who's, the community wants to know that the people making decisions are, you know, knowledgeable in those categories because those are key right now. Those are the most important. You don't have to know how to change, you know, replace a boiler and what the impact of that is, but you have to have the high level to make sure that you have a boiler working. That would be good. You know, those kind of things.
Okay, how do we feel about this?
I think it's great. It really is.
We're going to look into it.
Well, we're gonna get
We're
we're
gonna
gonna
have
get
training.
certified because we're gonna work towards the professional development to be able to answer all of these questions, right?
Yeah,
So
the
I
board
would-
certification is going to
Right.
come as a result of.
It's gonna
us
come,
getting-
exactly. But ultimately, we're gonna be certified in all of this because of all of our.
Yeah,
professional
you're not going to get it done
development.
in
Go
a
us.
year.
That same energy.
Go us.
You're not going to get it done in a year. So I would word your goal as training towards, you know,
No,
yeah, it embedded in
that's what I
there,
said.
working towards.
The goal was to look into board certification, which could be, we just did that.
Nothing to look into.
Okay, good. Put it on there.
I
And
know, that's
now,
why I said it's good. It's going
yep,
to be very easy.
put it
It's
on
gonna
there
be a
and
very
you just
easy
checked
goal.
it off. Very
Yes.
good. Well done.
Boom, we just
Well
finished.
done. Well done.
All right. Thank you very much. This was a very good training. And I look forward to many more. And can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Will we adjourn?
Well, I gotta write that down. So Jody, motion. John, second.